Welcome. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame Induction Ceremony 2000. Honoring Eric Clapton, Nat King Cole, Clyde Davis, Earth, Wind and Fire, Billie Holiday, The Lovin' Spoonful, The Moonglows, Bonnie Raitt, James Taylor. With special guests Ray Charles, Melissa Etheridge, Sir Paul McCartney, John Mellencamp, Natalie Cole, Robbie Robertson, Diana Ross, Paul Simon, Patti Smith. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame Induction Ceremony 2000.
By the time Eric Clapton released his first solo album in 1970, he was already one of the most celebrated guitarists in rock. Clapton was born in Ripley, England in 1945. By age 18, he'd established himself in the burgeoning English blues scene as guitarist for the Yardbirds. Soon Clapton was rewriting rock history in John Mayall's Blues Breakers, Cream, and Blind Faith. But for Clapton, the 60s were just a warm-up. His solo work underscored an additional strength, the power of his impassioned voice.
What do you do when you get lonely? No one's waiting for your sign. You've been running hot and much too long.
In his recordings throughout the from reggae to country to R&B, his loyalty was not to a single style, but to emotional integrity.
Would you know my name? Everybody know I'm here.
Eric Clapton has never stopped moving forward. Along his journey, he pointed out the roads that other musicians follow. The Lovin' Spoonful captured the 60s at its gentle, dreamy, whimsical best. Their songs are like a core sample of the decade's idealism, when everything seemed possible.
What a day for a daydream. What a day for
The group got together in 1965. Singer-songwriter John Sebastian and guitarist Zal Janowski came out of the Greenwich Village folk scene, where they had played in the Mugwumps with future members of the Mamas and Papas.
ain't really on my side. It's one of those days for taking a walk outside.
Bass player Steve Boone and drummer Joe Butler were rockers from Long Island.
Music like we played so long ago.
The band set about fusing all the music and energy they heard in the air, from jug band stomp to folk to vaudeville to rock.
Believe in magic. Any young girl talk how the music can free her whenever it's
It was called electric good time music.
The blues to me is like being very sad, very sick, going to church, being very happy. Blues is sort of a mixed up thing. You just have to feel it. Anything I do sing, it's part of my life.
Lady sings the blues.
Billie Holiday was born in Baltimore in 1915 and died in New York City in 1959. In her brief 44 years, she put down some of the greatest sides in jazz.
Papa may have, but God bless the child that's got his own.
She claimed inspiration from Louis Armstrong and Bessie Smith, but sounded like nobody else.
Saddest tale on land or sea.
Dubbed Lady Day, Billie Holiday was the preeminent female blues singer of the century.
Oh, what little moonlight can do.
After being discovered in 1933 by John Hammond in a Harlem club, Holiday signed to Columbia Records, where she rewrote the rules of jazz singing.
You're in love. Your heart's so flat and all this.
Throughout her work with Louis Armstrong, Teddy Wilson, and Count Basie, Billie developed her trademark style, a seemingly offhand lagging behind the beat.
My man, he don't love me. He treats me.
She didn't have an easy life. You can hear it in that singular voice, swinging yet melancholy, and searing with emotional intensity.
That I've ever seen.
Holiday struck a turning point in her career when she documented her lifelong struggle with racism in the 1939 classic, Strange Fruit.
Here is a fruit for the crows to pluck, for the rain to
After battling heroin addiction and heartbreak, Holiday's years of hard living caught up to her all too soon. She died as she lived, in chaos and pain, but the devastating beauty of Billie Holiday's art lives on for anyone who's known the blues.
cry.
It will be forever.
Nat King Cole was a class act, an artist who broke down barriers with grace, charm, and effortless talent. As a chart-topping balladeer, TV host, and movie star, Cole blazed new trails in entertainment.
Rambling,
It wasn't always easy, but you never saw him sweat.
a rambling rose. Come on, everybody, why you rambling?
Born in Alabama in 1919, Nat grew up surrounded by the gospel music of his preacher father, but was drawn instead to the hot jazz piano of Earl Father Hines. By the late 30s, he was leading his own groundbreaking trio in Los Angeles.
Each night I pray that no one will steal her heart away.
Cole's 1940s recordings are classics of small group swing. With his first chart hit, a great pop singer was born.
When I marry sweet Lorraine,
Nearly 50 top 40 hits followed.
Mona Lisa, men have named you.
Some called him the Sepia Sinatra, but he was far more than that. He moved into film playing W.C. Handy in St. Louis Blues and provided running commentary for Cat Ballou.
Rode away, just where now is a mystery.
In an environment that regularly demeaned African American contributions, Nat King Cole appealed to audiences of all ages and races with unsurpassed integrity.
Unforgettable.
By the time of his death from lung cancer in 1965, Nat could look out over a pop culture landscape that he had helped transform.
That someone so unforgettable thinks that I am unforgettable.
The stars may be on the album covers, but it's the great sidemen who are the invisible essential glue that hold classic rock and roll performances together.
Take out the papers and the trash.
When King Curtis played on a record, you knew it. His storming, honking sax solos, especially on the Coasters hits like Yakety Yak, are party-hardy R&B classics.
Yakety yak.
Don't go back.
Wouldn't it be nice if
Who has it Hal Blaine played drums for? By his own count, Blaine has kept the beat on over 35,000 recordings, including hits by the Beach Boys, the Supremes, and the Solo Beatles. The snarling guitar of Scotty Moore made Elvis classics like Heartbreak Hotel and Hound Dog rock. Moore was Elvis's partner, band leader, and early manager. Scotty Moore was one of the great architects of rock and roll guitar. James Jamerson was the secret ingredient in nearly every Motown record from the 60s. In the process, he revolutionized bass playing and laid the groundwork for the funk explosion. When you called Earl Palmer into your session, you knew you were getting the finest grooves in New Orleans. He powered the great hits of Little Richard, Lee Dorsey, and Fats Domino, and he hasn't slowed down since. These unsung heroes provided the backbone for hundreds of records. Even if the public never knew their names, they knew their sound. These are the musicians so many other musicians revere.
and ball tonight?